we are creating and parenting and coaching the leaders of tomorrow. That's, to me, it's so important to effectively take what I've learned on the sports field and apply it to my family, because we need more leaders now more than ever. And now more than ever when they're old enough.
Welcome to the Dad Central Show, hosted by Ed Gow Jr. and Drew Solon. We know dads want to see their kids succeed, but they don't always know how to get there. This show gives dads the tools they need to raise confident and successful kids.
What is up, everybody? Ed Gow Jr. here from the Dad Central Show and Dad Central. And I didn't know if I'd even make it on today with what I went through. Had to switch computers, this, that, and the other thing, but we're here. But Drew is always here.
You know what? I am here, but I had my own tech issues too. So we're going to work through it and make sure we still have a great conversation today. So thanks, Ed.
Absolutely. What's been going on in your world?
You know, man, as I've talked about before, it's summertime. No camp for the kids this week, so it's full. It's busy. Takes some energy and coordinating, moving bits and pieces. You need like a project management degree to be able to, all the 5 kids and places and all that other stuff. So
I think, busy. Drew, maybe we need to launch a project management degree for fathers. I think give them a certificate.
No, you know what I say? I think there's a delicate balance between scheduling too much, like being overscheduled, and not creating, we talk about this concept, margin, not creating the appropriate space, because we're busy running to fro. Sometimes you just need to have quiet time and chill out. Yeah. Kids can read a book. You can have coffee or tea. You know my phrase. It's a delicate balance.
Give yourselves grace, dads and fathers. Give yourselves grace. Yeah. So as we get ready into this conversation that we've found a way to make happen today, the Dad Central Show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. So we're excited as always to bring great epic conversations with dads, fathers, male caregivers, and experts and authorities when it comes to fatherhood and dadhood. So we have another new friend. And again, we're going back, I believe, to the state of Texas today.
We are. Everything's bigger in Texas.
All right. So Drew, can you do the royal introduction?
Yeah, well, today we're honored to have Nick Scrivens. He's the owner of Fore Fathers, which is an innovative new clothing line for dads. And so we're excited to have Nick talk. Not so much, we're going to hear about Fore Fathers, but we're going to hear about Nick's fatherhood journey. And that's kind of what I'm excited to talk about. So,
all right,
Nick, welcome to the show. Really glad to have you here.
Go, Nick Scrivens. And you see, he has an apparel company because you see the inventory behind him. So he's not only talking the talk, he's walking the walk. What's up, Nick?
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me. That project management software.
I saw your reaction to that in the back in the green room. I said, it sounds like you like that.
I did. That was a great solution for a lot of people, me included. As you can see, it's pretty chaotic around my house, but thanks again for having me, guys.
My pleasure. Our pleasure. Drew, let's kick it off.
Yeah, well, Nick, we love to get the guest's backstory. We want to know a little bit more about what life was like growing up and how that led to sort of where you're at today. So why don't you start by just telling us, what was life like for Nick growing up?
So I'm an East Coast cat. Actually, I was born in Maryland, right outside the DC Metroplex area. So shout out to all the 301 people out there.
Nice.
Just kind of grew up where my only good grades was on the recess blacktop. Everything else just was a challenge for me. Had a pipe dream to play football in college. Unfortunately, I realized that I was just going to stay a pudgy 5'11" guy, and that didn't work out so well. So I attended a small school in Philadelphia, and then picked up golf, which was a lot of fun. And then shortly after college, I got the cliche phone call from my best friend. He was like, "Hey, Scriv, you trying to move up to New York City?" And now, just to kind of set the stage there, I was living in my parents' basement, slinging drinks at California Pizza Kitchen. And, moving up to New York seemed like a pretty good idea at the time, with no job and hardly any money in the bank account. But it was so much fun. We were in Brooklyn, living with your best friends. The world's your oyster at that time. had just various types of strange jobs, from mopping floors, cleaning toilets, serving wine, to becoming a sales guy. So it was New York, right? Opportunities at the touch of your fingertips. And after 5 years of just the circus, we'll call it, decided I wanted out, and I flipped a coin. It was either going to be between Scottsdale, Arizona, or Dallas, Texas. I was either going to follow my career of the headquarters in Scottsdale, or do something totally spontaneous in Dallas. Didn't really know anyone. So obviously, 10 years ago, that coin flipped and landed on Dallas, which now it's so weird to even think and put myself back into those shoes, but truly humbled and grateful for it landing where it did. So within 10 years of living here, I kind of pursued an outside sales role in IT security, where I'm still actively working. And then, 4 years ago, I met my wife on a nice Sunday evening. About within a year and a half, we were engaged. Then we bought a house, got married February 1st in Mexico. And let me tell you, if you're debating on where to get married out there, get married in Mexico. It's awesome. It's a lot of fun. Make sure it's all inclusive. And don't worry about all the people that are going to give you a lot of trouble about not making it. It's those that make it will make it right. So that was February 1st. And then boom, COVID hit. Depending on where you were globally, around in Texas, it kind of was a little bit later, but late March, things shut down. We then became more of our homebodies, if you will. And then December 2020, I had my first child, Blakely Carter, a baby girl who really just, they always say there's chapters in life, but I would almost argue until I'm blue in the face that once you enter parenthood, it's a whole new book. It's almost like throw out what you knew and now start fresh. So shortly thereafter, when I mean shortly, I mean 18 months later, my wife and I welcome in our baby boy, Vinny Parker Scrivens, that is just the Incredible Hulk and is literally causing all sorts of nightmares with my wife and I because he just won't sleep. So hopefully that's a little bit of a backstory on who I am and how we're here today.
Well, Nick, it's interesting hearing you, the adventure and then all the coin toss to make the decision on where to go. But 10 years later, here you are, and now obviously into that fatherhood journey. So let's talk maybe about that transition, because you said it's a whole new book, not just a new chapter of life. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah. And, I think there was a sense of ownership immediately when I found out I was going to become a dad, right? And there's that pregnancy stage, and, we're at home the entire time. And not only being a new homeowner, and I wanted to be a very good homeowner, but, and I say the example of I never used a saw or a drill, and then COVID hit. I'm taking down fences, building raised gardens, plugging in fans, hanging TVs. So I just became obsessed with, knowledge and performing different acts that were building character, one as a homeowner and a husband. And then when I found out on how to be, that I was becoming a dad, the transition shift into, okay, how do we do this? How do you prioritize what you're learning? And, effectively, just like anyone else that was seeking knowledge, I turned to YouTube. And, I was blessed with very good content that was being receptive. But one thing that made me scratch my head was I kept learning all the necessary skills, the do's and don'ts from the woman's narrative. And I was like, man, where's all the guys talking about fatherhood? Where are all the guys talking about what diapers, what bottles, how to incrementally introduce food to your child's daily lives? And it just wasn't out there. And that's where it became a new book for me, because I kept seeking and searching that type of information. So, and then then the next component is what kind of dad do you want to be? Because I do think there's different levels, and truly, I like to hang my hat on each and every day, because it is a clock in, but no clocking out kind of job, where you have to put yourself at the back of the train. And I do believe that by nature, human beings, we're selfish, right? We want nice things to always happen to us. And here, as a dad, we must prioritize our children first, to instill the appropriate virtues and values that we effectively believe will help them grow. And that in itself is a hard to perform at a each and every day level. I mean, we think of our athletes, our heroes, the ones that can effectively go out in the field and always win, right? I mean, but there is no scoreboard in fatherhood. There is no $1 million contracts that you sign in order to incentivize you. It's really self-inflicting, right? I mean, we want the man in the mirror to be someone that our children recognizes as a great role model. And, effectively all those, let's call it habits or, days in your teens and 20s of who you were, you can no longer be that individual, right? There's a sense of you must hold yourself to a higher standard, because now you really have people looking up to you to take care of them. And so I think that's where it's a different book is, effectively we go through this life of taking care of ourselves, but then once you have a kid, you're taking care of someone else, and then you have to take care of yourself. It's I always tell my wife, it's like the analogy of the airplane, right? As they do their spiel in the beginning, it's if the air quality goes low, put the mask on yourself first and then your child. And it's almost like you got to make sure you're in the right head too, but then you got to take care of your child. So it's interesting.
Nick, you mentioned basically YouTube University to get your education. Did you have any other references, whether human or reading wise, in that early journey of fatherhood?
Not much, but as I seeked more, I was introduced to various outlets. Fathercraft, they good friends of mine that have built a serious playbook on exactly what I was looking for. And I think from a person to person, it's a big gap, and it still is. And it's a reason why we started Fore Fathers, is because it's much cooler for men to go to happy hour or go to a birthday party and talk about, is LeBron James going to play with Bronny in the NBA, or is Aaron Rodgers going to win a Super Bowl at the Jets? It's like, who cares about that stuff? It's like every day we're just fed it. But who's really talking about how they're taking care of their children? What type of things have they put in place to make sure their kids go down to nap or stay in their bed in the middle of the night, don't come down with, to sleep in the parents' bed, things like that are actually of substance. I think the one-to-one conversations I never really had until just recently, where, people relate Fore Fathers and they're like, oh, Nick, we can talk to him about, parenthood, or all just suggested. But early on, it was, there was a lack of information from a man's perspective out there.
Nick, what it sounds like is that this concept of becoming a father and what it means, and you talk about this whole new book, is really important to you. Like, I could hear the passion and energy coming from you that you got to be different. You can't live that way, maybe selfishly, that you were before, because you've got these children that are relying on you and a family relying on you. And so you talked about, can you talk about where does that come from? Because it seems like it was pretty obvious how passionate you were about that.
Yeah. And I'll be real, right? I think I'm truly blessed for the parents that I had. My father did provide enough where my mother never had to work, and she took care of 3 kids. So again, that just platform in itself, to recognize how valuable that is as a parent, that you have a nonstop mentor always around you to take care of you, because not everyone is as fortunate. There are parents individually and collectively that are working multiple jobs. just enough to provide for them and their families. So, but then on the flip end, there were certain things that, growing up that I recognized from my dad that I never wanted to mirror. I didn't want to be that certain persona that took a lot of anger out on his children and his family. So that's where a lot of the passion is driven from is, yes, there's a lot of things that I can take away, but there's also a lot of things that I need to learn quickly in order to instill that type of confidence and love into my children that I may or may not have ever received. And that might be a lot of real talk and a lot of layers to uncover there. But we're products of our environment, right? And to really shift focus into something that you've never gone through or experienced, that's a lot where I get to the analogy of it being a whole different book because, it's one of the reasons I was drawn and fell in love with my wife. Her family life growing up, it was a lot of hugs and kisses each and every day, still is. They're remarkable in-laws, probably the best ever. But to not effectively seen a lot of emotion provided, was it the kisses or the hand holding or the hugging in my house, but it just wasn't there. But I do know how important it is for my kids early on, from these 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 3 to 5, to feel like I'm always going to be for them emotionally, just to kind of give perspective. My dad, he grew up a blue collar guy, right? He was the first to go to college in his family of 6. So he had a lot of baggage that he was, carrying himself. But ultimately, just to kind of be at home and seeing and playing with my children, I can almost see the gator skin kind of falling off, if you will, day in and day out because of the my availability to them to be emotional day in and day.
Are you a dad who feels like you're juggling a million things at once? Balancing work, family, and personal goals can be overwhelming. But what if there was a solution? That's why we created our new fatherhood community called Dad Mentor. For over 20 years, Dad Central has built practical tools to help dads. We understand the challenges you face and provide the support you need to thrive. The biggest complaint we hear from dads is there's no dedicated support for their specific needs. But not anymore. Our new community, called Dad Mentor, is here to transform your fatherhood experience. Imagine feeling in control, staying calm and patient when your children misbehave. Picture yourself connected to your children, guiding them with confidence and watching them succeed. When you join Dad Mentor, you'll have access to a community of like-minded dads committed to their dad journey, just like you. You'll also get the Dad's Roadmap. This is a step-by-step plan to help you go from unsure to unstoppable as a dad. Monthly masterclasses and Q&A sessions. You'll get answers and know exactly what to do straight from experts. Monthly group meetups that connect dads over common topics. A dad's resource library. Curated webinars, podcasts, or guides built by Dad Central to help you grow as a parent. And finally, you'll also get exclusive members-only offers and events. Now, many dads do try to do this fatherhood thing alone, only to find themselves trapped in frustration and strained relationships. Then they may turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms like drugs, alcohol, or other distractions, leaving their family and their own well-being at risk. We don't want you to reach that point of regret. Take steps to invest in you and your family today. Join Dad Mentor and go from stressed, tired, and overwhelmed to confident, calm, and connected. Join us today by going to dadcentral.ca/dads. That is probably a common experience from many fathers who are in our similar sort of age and stage. And I know that my experience is one that I was very passionate about having a different experience for my kids growing up. So passionate, like it drove me, right? And so I certainly understand that for sure. So I was just curious to know if that was something similar for you. So yeah. So to me, what I hear, especially when we talk about that gator skin coming off, is this idea for me of growth and change, which can be hard. So I don't know, has it been hard for you, or how have you been able to make those changes happen for you and be that type of dad you want to be for your kids? Especially you've had lots of challenges. I just want to put that out there. COVID, like having kids during the pandemic, like, I mean, layers, and many, we haven't really talked with anyone who's had a child during COVID and what those challenges are. But, so how have you been able to do that then?
It's funny. I would say, like, I couldn't imagine parenting outside of COVID. Wow. I couldn't imagine because, my routine was out at 6 a.m., home around 6:30. And, it takes a village. I have such a great supporting cast. My in-laws, my brother, mom live down the street. We have a fantastic babysitter. We have a lot of other friends that participate, come over and help out. And I still think it's so challenging. I just couldn't imagine, if I was going to work each and every day and then coming back and, having my wife to deal with both kids, by herself. I just couldn't imagine that. So, the real challenge is life work balance. It's also, I will say one of the things that I think is even more challenging than being a great dad is being a great husband during this time of just it's just chaos. I mean, just to kind of give you some insight, we were talking about it earlier, but some people are blessed with great babies, and I'm so envious of that. Here's an example. They a lot of the blogs will talk about colicky. If your baby starts crying 3 to 4 hours a day, she's colicky or he's colicky. That's great. My daughter only gave us about an hour of not crying. She was born in December. I'm telling you, I used to push her stroller in ice storms, snow in Texas, rainstorms, because it was the only place she would sleep. And effectively, I'll tell you a quick story. I hadn't been to the doctor in 10, 15 years for anything, but I had this excruciating pain in my left wrist. And so I, build up the courage. My wife's like, either you need to stop complaining or you need to go to the doctor. And I'm like, all right, like this really hurts. So I go to the, book an appointment. The doctor starts touching my hands and he's like, I'm like, man, like, why are you doing that kind of thing? He's like, yeah, you have mommy's thumb. And I was like, mommy's thumb? Like, what are you talking about? He goes, yeah. He goes, 99% of the 99% of the time we see this in women that just had kids. And she's like, did you just have a kid? I was like, well, I didn't. My wife did about 3-4 months ago. He's like, yeah, it's because you're holding her too much. I just immediately was drawn back. I was like, oh my goodness. But I mean, that was the reality. So then I eventually got surgery on this nerve because that was just, my introduction to fatherhood. And again, that's where the importance of people talking about fatherhood to me is the true passion, is because man, is you and your wife are thinking different things. Your wife may thinking that the disconnected from the child. It's hard to, relate at those times. Me being like, wow, like I'm dealing with work, all the outside noise, do I effectively giving enough time to my children? And that's where a lot of the challenges begin. Right. And that's where it's important for you and your wife to always be aligned on, the roles you play, the expectations and the goals you put in front of your family. And I think, we definitely had those conversations. I mean, they were hard because our baby girl was throwing us all sorts of curveballs. So then effectively she started hitting her groove around 8-10 months, which was really cool. And, bless my wife's soul, but having 2 kids under 2, and Drew, you're mentioning twins. I couldn't imagine it, but here my wife's body is changing through pregnancy, then has the first child. And then immediately, 9 months later, we found out we were having another baby. So then she's going through the process all over again. And just where you're trying to hit your groove, and then bang, your body starts transitioning. And then our son popped out, and man, he's tough. And I can confidently say boys and girls are definitely different. An example is, my daughter learned, we never had a gate around our stairs, right? Because she just recognized like, hey, that's a long drop. I don't want to go there. I feel like my son like wants to just dive off it. Like he's very he has a lot of courage, I guess we could say. But yeah, I think just in those early on stages, because there is no playbook, expectations, what are they? And I like to think of parenthood like the NCAA tournament, right? Just survive and advance.
Absolutely. And clearly, you've been able to bring some, important mindsets or important, grit to your parenthood experience, both you and your wife. And so, what's maybe one thing that you and your wife have done, because you talked about the importance of that relationship and being aligned. What's one thing that you've done that's helped build that alignment?
To me and my wife?
Yeah.
Frequently talk about real issues that are happening in our own heads and in the house, and then allocating our time. And I think that was the biggest mistake we didn't do early on was, it's just we consumed with our girl. And then it was like, oh, I got work, or, you do your thing. And that's where the frustration grew because, like I said, we got married really quick and we didn't really have a lot of time to experience being married, like the honeymoon phase. It's like, bang, you got married and you have a kid. Now you're parents. Oh my goodness. Like we got to be teammates. And then, we got to work together. Well, who's going to do what? Right. And without allocating the necessary time to fall in love each and every day. Right. And it can even just be a half an hour or an hour or a walk or a lunch. That's where, we started to really groove one another, where we're going to wrangle these kids now. Right. I mean, because then you're a true teammate. But if you neglect it and you think everybody's okay and you don't talk about it, that's where trouble begins. And I to give you an inside look, I remember my wife was telling me pre-delivery of our girl, she's like, I just want to let you know, a lot of women experience postpartum after giving birth. And I'm like, I went to all boys school, by the way, from 3rd grade to 11th grade, and we missed those classes, but I was like, what is postpartum? And I had no idea. Never even heard the term probably. And, you start to recognize like, oh, wow. Like, you think about how many times you've eaten a Chipotle burrito and our bellies get out of whack. I mean, imagine having a baby in you for 9 months, kicking and screaming, and then the lack of sleep. I mean, if dads were to frequently stay up in the middle of the night, never get sleep, I mean, you understand why some people just, they're not as happy as can be. And that's another thing I recognize being a parent is, you gotta have grace for everybody. You don't know what it's like stepping in anybody else's shoes. And I think parenthood has taught me that more than ever, of just being more respectful to people's just, you kind of get to understand why some people are just mad. There's a lot going on.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Well, Nick, I mean those are important pieces, especially the communication and doing it more often and recognizing how important that is to be ahead of the game, so that you've got a game plan together and can be able to work towards that. But I know that we're tight for time, so I want to make sure we get a chance to. How have you, amidst all of that, also now created something called Fore Fathers? And taking that additional load on? I would imagine there was a conversation that brought to that, but tell us a little bit about Fore Fathers, how it started, and what Fore Fathers is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And Fore Fathers is all about celebrating the do-it-all dad while elevating dad's apparel. I got a phone call from a childhood friend that had an idea of, with high-end clothing, putting dad-isms in the designs, because we didn't feel as we've made this transition to fatherhood, that any brand really aligned to who we now were. Right. And growing up, I was wearing the Jordans, I played all the sports. You did like to look nice and you like to wear nice clothes. And, we just didn't feel that it was no longer cool to keep making fun of how dads dress. I mean, everybody knows like the New Balances, the high white socks, the jean shorts, and like the cotton polos. Like, oh, that's a dad. It's like, No, like I'm a
It's
dad.
like the progressive guy.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. Dr. Ray, yeah. Don't become your parents, whatever.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, so we got to work. It took us about 10 months to feel confident that we were Frankenstein in this polo, where we were confident to first give it to our friends and families. Right. So you're doing everything necessary to figure out fabric, who's going to design these things, where do we get them, who's going to build a website, how much money are we willing to put in. And I'll never forget, here we are with huge expectations. We're getting 9 different designs in for our first shipment. We're gonna kill it, man. Who wouldn't want to kill it or purchase a Fore Fathers polo, right? You convince yourself. We had about 175 pre-orders from family and friends, which was cool. Got product at my house November 23rd, the night before Thanksgiving. Flipped the lights on, start asking people to post for us or whatnot. Didn't have a sale. I'll never forget the emotion of that week of not having a sale, just putting so much money into this company, having such high aspirations and just goals, and we're in the middle of the holidays and nothing. But shortly after December 3rd, I get a text. It's like, hey, you seeing what's happening? And I was like, what, man? Did the website crash? Like, what could be worse? We started seeing sales of one design in particular. It was our Turf Dad, which is the mowing cross stripes. And long story short, next morning I get an email. It's like, hey, bloke, just saw your meme in our Facebook group, and I was curious if you guys ship to Australia. Mind you, at this time, I had not even shipped down the street. I was like, oh, but I'll figure it out. So what had happened, and the real explosion of the company, was our meme that we posted got circulated into various Facebook lawn groups, which are enormous and also many different types. And so we took that framework and be like, yeah, like we can make dadisms funny and appealing while just, disguising our polos in the meme. So, creating a list of about 300 different Facebook groups. I remember staying up late at night. I would submit these things and then comment on it from a different profile. Oh, wow, this is really funny, and because you didn't have money, we had no money to do a marketing ads or whatnot. So last year, we, throughout Q2, got an email marketing team. Going into Q4, we got a content marketing agency to help us with ads. But, to reflect, it was all bootstrap. It was picking up the phones, calling people, instilling the mission on them, or the mission of Fore Fathers. And then, it was a great Q4. We survived. I do a lot of in-person festivals in the Dallas area, which have just been extraordinary and instrumental to our growth, whether it's new customers, people just seeing us for brand awareness. But yeah, now we sit here in July, and as you can see, we definitely have more than 9 polos back there. So.
Nice. And so, that to me sounds like a full-time job in itself. Yeah, you were handling a family, 2 young kids, and other work on top of that. So what's your key for somebody who wants to say, hey, how do you survive that? How do you make it through that? What's your advice to anyone?
A lot of whiskey. Make sure you have whiskey. And lots of it.
Is that in one of your dad memes in your next polo?
Yeah, not yet. We should though. But that's exactly it. And I think you need to be obsessed with something. And my obsession is to just be the best dad that I can be. And I truly mean it. I think, it is a cliche line, but yet if you believe it as much as that I do, it must be said, because it is chaotic. The amount of sacrifices that not just me, but my wife, we haven't been on a vacation since our wedding. My in-laws who take care of the kids when I'm at events, helping out as much, my brother helping me at events, my mom pitching in to do a lot of the babysitting. It is a lot. And sometimes you question if it's worth going further. And then you sit back, you take a deep breath. And, what I tend to do is like, well, it's kind of the analogy of what happens if you just took one more step further. Is that going to be your last step, or is that next one? So I think it's incrementally of just focusing on what's in front of you, and then the circle of influence. What can you truly control and what can't you control? So then prioritizing your day effectively, and being very good at smoke and mirrors in your real job. Pretending people that you fake until you make it, I guess.
Being efficient.
Yeah.
I think the core, I appreciate that, Nick. And so I think the core of it is, be the best dad you can be, and make the most of what you've got. It's sort of right in front of you. So that's key. So why don't you tell our listeners, and where can they learn more about Fore Fathers and get one of those dadism shirts?
Yeah. So, and again, my goal is to use clothing as the vehicle to build a community of moms and dads alike. That is my true passion. Sure, I want to make sales and grow our brand, but I want to build our community more effectively. And you go to Shop Fore Fathers on Instagram, shopforefathers.com on the website. And more importantly, on the main header, you'll see a section called the database. The database is one of my true focuses of the content necessary to learn how to be a dad, right? We have categories like DIY projects, barbecue projects, lawn, details. I also write diaries about, my journey of, what to expect and how people, tend to get through things. But yeah, that database is hopefully where people can funnel towards because and contribute to. So you can find us there at shopforefathers.com and then look at database.
It's great. Ed, are you still here?
I'm listening. I'm not interrupting. I know we're really hard on time, but a quick little conversation piece for you, Nick. At the end of the day, what would you like your kids to say about you?
That's a real question.
Well, you've been giving us real talk, so I came back with a real conversation.
Yeah, my dad instilled the necessary virtues and values to make a difference in this world. And hopefully they become better parents than I was, right? And I think that's the evolution of a true family, is that you continuously get better. Yeah, it's hopefully they grow up and have a character that other people want to be around. And I think that's important, that we are creating and parenting and coaching the leaders of tomorrow. That's, to me, it's so important to effectively take what I've learned on the sports field and apply it to my family, because we need more leaders now more than ever. And now more than ever when they're old enough.
So well said. Nick, I just want to say thanks so much. And I am confident that when it's all said and done, that you're going to leave that legacy for your kids, and because you're living it out right now, being the best dad you can be. So thanks for inspiring us, and thanks for inspiring our listeners with just sharing your story. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys. Truly appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. Remember, as always, give yourself grace and don't just manage your time, manage your energy.
Yeah.
And not too much whiskey, okay? Have a good one. Take care.
Absolutely.
All right, we are back, and another great conversation. I love his perspectives on fatherhood. Really,
absolutely.
do. Yeah, I think there's a book in the making.
Nice.
I was thinking about a book when I was seeing that and going, "There's a book here." Nick needs to write a book. But what did you get from that, Drew?
Be the best dad you can be. I think that's for me the takeaway.
For me, so many knowledge bombs, but I'd listened a lot. One of the things is, when you're a dad, be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself and be able to laugh at yourself. So I think those are the two of the many big knowledge bombs I got from that. But hey, as always, we want to say thank you very much for everyone who's listening, watching. Always remember, the Dad Central Show is sponsored by Dublin Plus Care. Dublin Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man, because when men care, for themselves and others. There's a positive impact. As always, if you want to listen.
Hold on one second, Ed. I know we put it on the screen before, but I want to remind listeners, Nick has given us a special promotional offer. So using the code DAD Central, all one word, DAD Central, you can get 25% off at Fore Fathers. So remember, discount code DAD Central, all one word, you get 25% off at Fore Fathers. Shop forefathers.com.
Wonderful. Good stuff. Again, if you want to listen to replays or watch the show, we're at dadcentral.ca/podcasts. Please email us. Tell us what you think. Give us suggestions. Give us tips in regards to fatherhood. Also, too, website address dadcentral.ca for piles of free resources. And also, too, remember to like our conversations on Apple Podcasts. Not only like, but write reviews. We appreciate that. We don't take it for granted. So as always, I just want to say, we like to say, remember to give yourself grace. Don't just manage your time, manage your energy, and we'll see you soon.